Okay, so go ahead and click to share screen, Cedric.
Yeah, I have a message here saying you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
Yeah, go ahead and take over sharing. It'll say, do you want to take over? Or
It only says okay, and then it closes.
oh, let's see, try it again now. See if it'll let you do it now.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, so pretty soon we're going to see Cedric's screen.
How about now? Can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just getting my monitor set up because I have two monitors, but I need to get it set up here. Okay, so we see your screen. You're logged in. And have I assigned an airline to you yet?
You mentioned yesterday that I should be focusing on Singapore.
Okay, so let's do that. So first click at the top on, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and go to Singapore Air. Yeah.
Oh, what's the website?
It's just SingaporeAir.com. Of course, yeah, SingaporeAir.com, I think it is. Okay. Let's see, you're missing an E, so that's not it. Oh, I think you got it now. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so do you see where it says redeem flights? Let me make it so that you guys can see what I'm. Click decline on that. We don't need promotional fares. Okay, so first thing you do is you hit redeem flight, and then we need to go find one to work on. So yeah, click on that one and just start at the top and keep a list of the ones that you've tried. So go ahead and click on, see this one that you're looking at has nothing done yet because it says 0 right here. So therefore you don't have to click the plus. You can start off by clicking the new because there's no old quotes to look at because the number is 0 right here under number of quotes. So go ahead and click new. So that means you've started a quote. And the first thing you do when you start a quote is to copy the customer's name on the top here and put it in this box right here, but in front of the name put SQ4, like Sam Queen space FOR, because this is a quote of Singapore Airlines for Cooper, and SQ is just the abbreviation for Singapore Air. So that way when anybody looks at this, they'll know that this is a Singapore Air quote for this person. They'll know that it was done by Cedric. It's the first attempt at sending a quote to this customer, and this status, go ahead and change your researching. And then go down to the lower left corner of your screen, and there's a place to hit save farther down, right there. So you hit that green save button. Everything you do, you hit the green save button in between. Okay, so now go to step 1 and click on that and find the one that says SQ Business Class and double click on it. It's up at the top here. SQ Business right there. Double click that and then change that to your name. And don't check this box yet because you're not completed yet, but just put working there and then click submit. Okay, and that makes it so that anybody else who's working on Singapore Air knows to skip this one because you're working on it. So if there's another quoter whose specialty is Singapore Air, when they come in here and see your name there, they're going to skip it and just go to another one so that only one person does Singapore Business Class. Okay, then click on the financial info, which is step 2. And to get this financial info, we have to go to your second tab right here. And this is your award calculator, but we need to know what to put in here. So this is going to be Singapore Air on this first line right here. Put SQ. You can just type SQ and hit tab, or you can go find it. Okay, and then next we need to know if we can get the flights that this guy wants and how many reward miles it's going to cost. Our business is buying reward tickets with miles and selling them to people for a discount. So we've got to go to the Singapore Air website and find out how many miles it's going to take us to buy what he wants. So first of all, go to the original tab where you were and go to the top and click on request info. And I like to write it down on a piece of paper so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. So what it is that you would write on your paper is the 8th of June, and then coming back the 3 of July. And you can see in the flexibility box that there is no flexibility mentioned. Otherwise, it would say plus 3 days, minus 3 days, plus or minus 2 days, whatever. And there's nothing there. So he's not flexible, or at least he didn't say he's flexible. It's business class. It's for one person. And here's where he wants to go. He wants to go from Christchurch, New Zealand, which is CHC, to CDG, which is Paris. And it's for one person, business class, and we know the dates. And we know he wants round trip because this says return. Return is another way of saying round trip. And so that's the information that I personally write down on my notes in front of me. So now let's go to Singapore Air and see if we can get this flight with Singapore Air miles. So you're going to put from CHC to CDG and put in the dates, 8 of June. And then they come back the 3 of July. And choose business class and one person, and then hit search. Remember, we clicked redeem flights up here, so we're looking for reward flights, not for money. So you got to put in a Singapore Air membership number. If you don't have one, I'll give you one to use for now, but eventually you'll want to sign up for your own free account at Singapore Air and use your own account number. Just put in your real information and get yourself a frequent flyer number with them so that you can use it for searching. So the number to put in is 881 918 9657, and the password is 102579, and click remember me and then log in. And you know, real soon, like some later today, go ahead and sign up for your own free Singapore Air account so that you can, you know, use your own account. Okay, it says there's no flights available. So let's go find out if maybe they go from Auckland, because we could get them a flight from Christchurch to Auckland. So put AKL in here. And then CDG in the other one. And then the dates, and make sure you click redeem flights at the top again. 8 of June, 3rd of July. And then click redeem flights again. Flip the cities out on you. Put AKL and then CDG and 8 of June. Not sure why it flipped you out. And then search. Why is it flipping you out? Huh, because it says there's no flights available. Okay, so let me go to a new tab. Just leave this. Go to a new tab. And click on your matrix button right here. And put in the original CHC to CDG, and then put in the dates, 8 of June, 3rd of July. Put business class, doesn't matter how many people, because we're not looking for availability here. We're just looking for routing. And then uncheck this box right here and hit search if you've got the right dates, June 8th, July 3rd. Yeah, put that in. Okay, now this is going to show us which airlines fly and how they get there. And we're going to look for anything that has partly Singapore Air in it. See, here's one that has partly Singapore Air in it. So click this price right here, or the Singapore symbol. You think either one will work. Okay, so they actually do fly this. See, they have Christchurch to Singapore to Paris. Click, go over here, you know, when you point over here, the word details will show up. And so he could buy this directly from Singapore Air for $5,000. So let's figure out why it's not offering it to us. Let's figure out if the website's broken or what, or maybe they're just not offering it on rewards. So the next step is, have I given you the KVS tool yet?
No, sir.
Okay, so let me send a file to you through Skype. Let's see. Actually, I don't want to take the time to do that right now. Let me do that when I'm in a private meeting with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at my KVS to show you what to do here. So let me click to show everybody my screen again instead of yours for a bit. And that way you'll be able to see my KVS. You'll do this yourself eventually, but I don't want to take the time to load KVS into your computer right now, so we'll just look at mine. Tell me, everybody can see my screen, right? So I'm going to change KVS to SQ. I'm going to put in the city CHC to CDG, and the date is the 8th of June. So this is a tool we'll provide to you. The 8th of June and the 3rd of July is the return. So did you notice I clicked the gear to duplicate it, the gear up here? And I'm not actually going to put the return in yet. I'm going to have 2 of the outbounds in here so I can try a couple different things. So it's for one person. Even though he didn't say he was flexible, I'm going to try maybe a day earlier and see if it works. So we're trying the 8th of June and the 7th of June. The dates right here. Christchurch to Paris using Singapore Air. We're just trying to figure out why it's not offering it to us on the website. Either the website's broken or maybe it's actually not available. So this is checking that. This is a tool that you have available to use, kind of a shortcut. So you can tell it's still thinking because down here at the bottom it says waiting for response. See where I'm pointing with a little blue circle. Same thing down here, waiting for response. And it might not be getting a response because the website's broken, because this tool goes to the website also. Okay, what it's telling me is CS minus. C is business class, S means saver or super cheap, that's what we want, and the minus means it's not available. If it was available, it would either be a plus or a number. Okay, so the reason that it's not offering it to us is simply that they're not offering it for rewards. So what I can do is, you know, try a day later, a day earlier, just in case the person's flexible, and let's see. If it doesn't give it to me all the way, I can also try it just Christchurch to Singapore. See how it goes from Christchurch to Singapore on this first flight and then from Singapore to Paris. So if it doesn't give it to me all the way, I can try a piece of it on the 8th of June, just Christchurch to Singapore. And this piece over here, I can try the Singapore to Paris part of it. And just break it into pieces and see if it'll give me a piece of it instead of none of it, So I'm using this KVS tool to just kind of double check the website. Why isn't it giving me, any option? And this piece is not available, and neither is this piece. So I know that it's not available on Singapore Air. The only other thing I can try is maybe if I get a flight from Christchurch over to Auckland, maybe I can do it from Auckland. So we're going to try that. Auckland to Singapore on a couple of different days. And 8th of June, this is the 9th of June. And we'll try the 8th of June. So we're trying 2 different days at once. The one on the right is the 8th of June. The one on the right is the 9th of June. So you just try and piece it together so that even from Auckland, it's not available. Okay, so boom, Singapore Air is not available. We checked it 2 different ways. We checked it on the website. We checked it on KVS. The dates they want are not available. I can go ahead and check the return date if I want. I'll put in CDG. Maybe I can at least get one way on Singapore miles. I'll put in CDG to CHC for the 3rd of July. 3rd of July. And we'll put in CDG to CHC for, let's say, a day later, the 4th of July, just to see if it's going to be available, if they can come home a day later. So now I'm checking just the return in the KVS tool. I could do this on the Singapore website, but it's faster to use this tool. You tried it on the Singapore website and it said it was not available. So I came to use this tool just to double check it to make sure it's just not a broken website. And I found out that it really is not available. And, oh, I must put the wrong CHC. CHC, CDG to CHC. So I'm just showing you that you can also check the return in KVS and it's also not available. So we're going to go back to your screen. Let me just wait till it finishes thinking to make sure. So go ahead and click to share screen and take over the screen again, Cedric. So we'll be looking at your screen again because we found out that it wasn't available. Okay, so go to your far left tab and go back to where it says working and go into the workflow checklist and put in there, double click on the word SQBiz and put not available, and then click the not available. Yeah, click the box that says you're done and hit submit. Okay, and then go down to the lower left corner and hit save, and then go to the top of your screen. That complicated screen that comes up, that just means that you already saved it. Because when you change the workflow checklist, it automatically saves it instantly, and you just tried to save it again, which is good, which is fine. But that complicated screen that popped up is just another way of saying there's nothing to save. You've already saved it. Okay, so go back to the top of your screen to quotes needed, and just go to the next one. And the next one is Beirut to Paris. However, as you get experience with Singapore Air, you're gonna know what cities are impossible for Singapore Air, and those you don't have to go in and mark it that you tried it if it's obvious. And this is an obvious one that you shouldn't even try. And what makes it obvious is pretty soon you'll have enough experience that you'll just know that it's obvious. For example, if we go to Matrix and we put this one in, put in Beirut to ORY in Matrix, just for education, modify search at the top right, and put BEY to ORY. And it doesn't matter the dates, just click search while you're here already. Just click search. let's see who flies Beirut to Paris and see if one of them is Singapore Air. And chances are one of them is not Singapore Air. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it's not. See, there's no Singapore Air here at all. And so this isn't even one of their routes. And the reason that I knew that is that Singapore Air is in Asia, you know, and Beirut is in the Mideast. So why would you fly backwards to get to Paris from, you know, Beirut? You see what I mean? So go back to the checklist, and if you had already opened this up and started a new one before you realized it was hopeless, then you would go into that workflow checklist and put not available. But since you haven't even opened it up, you haven't even started it, you just skip it. You don't have to do anything. So the next one is Melbourne to London. Now that one is one that Singapore Air might have available, and the quantity of quotes done is 0, so you don't have to hit the plus to look at what's been done. You can just hit new and start it. So click new, and write down the information. So go to request info first, and get, let's see, it's the 24th of June. I'm going to write it down too. And it's plus 2 days. Do you see that? After the 24th of June, it says plus 2 days. And then it says the 12th of July, and that also says plus 2 days. In other words, they're flexible to go later. It says business class, and now it's 2 passengers. Do you see that? And it's from Melbourne to London. So MEL to LHR. And return is on there, which means it's a round trip. Okay, so you've written down the information. So go into the request workflow checklist and mark the SQ that you're working on it so nobody else does. Change it to your name, working, hit submit. And now you can go to the Singapore Air website. And while you're doing that, I'm going to cheat and go to the KVS tool, which is something that you yourself would do if you had it, and I'll have you do it when you do have it. Melbourne to LHR on the 24th of June. And it's for 2 people. I'm going to use the KVS tool in the background to try and give you some help, just the same as you would use it in the background to try and give yourself some help. You just don't have it yet. Okay, so redeem flights. And by the way, when you search Singapore Air, it's always best to search it as 2 one-ways. So even though he's flying round trip, do your search just as a one-way. Now, some airlines you do not want to do that, and some airlines you do want to do that. And since you're the Singapore Air specialist, or you're one of them, you'll know that you do always search Singapore Air as 2 one-ways. It's just better on the Singapore Air website. And they don't penalize you charging you a higher price because you're going one way. And some airlines do charge you a higher price because you're going one way. So those airlines you would never search as one ways if you can help it. For example, Asia Miles, which is Cathay Pacific, you would never search as 2 one-ways. You'd always try and search it as a round trip if possible. Sometimes you have no choice, but if possible, you try and search Asia Miles as a round trip. Singapore Air is the opposite. If possible, you always search it as 2 one-ways on Singapore Air. So Melbourne to London, one way, the 24th of June, business class, 2 people. Go ahead and hit search. No flights available again. Let me check Melbourne to London, 24th of June. Let me check and see what I get on KBS. 24th of June, Melbourne to London. Let's see. Do you guys still hear me talking?
Yes, sir. I actually have flights here.
Oh, you found some? Okay, let me come back and look and see what you got going on.
But it says...
Yeah, but it says wait list.
Yeah.
So the saver, let me turn on my thing. Okay, how come all of a sudden it gave you flights? You just tried it again and it worked?
Yes.
Okay, so see, the saver column is what we hope to get,
Mm.
and this says not available. So slide down your page and let's see if there's some other flights available. There's not. Okay, so then go back up, and this says that if we pay the higher price, it might be available, but even that's waitlisted, so it's not available. So give me a second. I want to, how come it got muted again? Okay, there we go. I want to cheat on, let's see, let me think out loud for a minute. First, go back to your page and click at the bottom. It'll say next day, because remember he said he was flexible 2 days. So see, I'm trying to figure out how to move this thing out of the way that I've got in my way. Just a minute on my screen. Go to the bottom, it'll say next day, hit next day, but I can't see it yet, so give me a minute and I'll come and join you. Okay, so this one is the next day, I take it, 25 of June, and it's still the same problem. The saver is waitlisted and the other is not available. Let's see what it says at the top. Not available, waitlist, waitlist, not available. Okay, so it's not available. So let me show you what I would do in this case and what you would do once you have KVS. So what I'm going to do is make it so you can see my screen again and show you KVS again. When the website tells you it's not available, then you go use KVS to see if it's true and see if you can get it in pieces, and there's some tricks you can do. So for example, we're doing Melbourne to London the 24th of June, and it was for 2 people. So if I hit that, and then if I put Melbourne to London in again here so that I can check a different day, LHR on the 24th of June. That's odd that it's not available again. Okay, so the one on the left is thinking. The one on the right, I'm going to hit this down arrow over here and have it check the next day. So while it's checking the next day, I'm looking for either CS Plus or FS Plus on the left-hand side here, and it's not there. And that's what you found on the website also. So I'm going to hit plus or the up arrow and try the previous day, even though he didn't say he wanted the previous day. I'm just going to try it for training, see if it comes up. So here's the next day, the 25th of June, and I am looking down all the way down this list for a CS Plus or an FS Plus, and there's none there. So I'm going to hit the down arrow again because he's flexible up to 2 days later. So now I'm trying the 26th of June. And here's the day before he even wanted, and there's no FS Plus. So now I'm going to try it in pieces, just Melbourne to Singapore, because remember we found out in that their hub is Singapore. So let's just try a piece of it, just the Melbourne to Singapore part of it. And this one on the right is trying 2 days later all the way Melbourne to London. We're looking for CS Plus, and there's no CS Plus. So we're going to try this one, the Singapore to London part of it. And over here, the 24th of June, which is the day he wants to go, there is a flight, which is CS Plus right there. And I'm going to hit the gear to launch another one so that I can save that one in the background. And we're going to try again the next day and see if something's, because he's flexible 2 days. Now this, so the part that's not available is the Singapore to London part because there's no CS Pluses or anything here. So we're going to click the next day. What if he stays overnight in Singapore and goes the next day? So we're trying it in pieces, and that's one of the advantages of KVS is that it lets you break it up into pieces and check pieces of it at a time without having to do the whole thing on the website. And there's no FS Plus or CS Plus here. So this puts it into the category that it has to be searched as an advanced search, and it would mean, oh, here's a first class, but that's still the Melbourne to Singapore part. We didn't find the Singapore to London part at all yet. Okay, so the Singapore to London part, since we didn't find it on Singapore Air, we can see if it's available on some other airline by just clicking this black arrow at the top here. Even though you're the Singapore Air specialist, you can still use other airlines if you need to, if it's not available. So what we're going to do is try, for example, British Air from Singapore to London on, we found this on the 24th of June. It gets into Singapore at 6 in the morning. So we'll try the 24th of June just on a different airline. So we've got this piece that goes from Melbourne to Singapore, 24th of June. Let's see if we can get Singapore to London. And we'll try that on British Air. And at the same time, we'll also try it on, let's say, Asia Miles. Okay. So Melbourne to Singapore, no, we want to hit the swap button and go Singapore to London. So we already got the Melbourne to Singapore part. And let's try this on a different airline like CX. So this top one, we're trying it on British Air and it said nothing available. How about the next day? We'll hit the down arrow to try the next day. We're just trying to piece this together because we couldn't get it all the way on Singapore Air. So we're trying to piece it together some way. Trying British Air for a couple days later. This one is Asia Miles. We're trying for a couple days later. Just trying to see how can we get the rest of this trip, partly Singapore Air and partly something else. You don't have to go into it this deep with every reservation you do. I'm doing it this deep as training to show you what you can do. Let's see, Singapore, London, Cathay Pacific. It's still thinking. And this one has seats available. It goes from Singapore to Doha to London, but it's at 2:25 in the morning on the 26th. So what I'd want to do is travel on the 25th to connect up with that. So it'd be, we'd want to get there at night on the 25th because this one's on the 26th. So I'm going to hit this one over here and see if there's a Melbourne to Singapore on the 25th to connect up with that. And there is, but it gets to Singapore at 6 in the morning and this one doesn't leave till the next day at 2 in the morning. So it's a really long layover unless he happens to want to, stay in Singapore. So that's probably not going to work unless, we find out from the customer that he actually wants to stay in Singapore for a couple of days, but I don't think he does. So we're going to try a different airline now. And whoops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this. We'll try the Singapore to London for something else. Let's see, Air France, Delta. Okay, there's nothing else here that's going to work. So we're going to abandon this. And what you would do is Skype the salesperson and say, I found something where they could stay overnight in Singapore. So if the customer wants to stay overnight in Singapore, let me know. And then, the salesperson will let you know to do another requote. So we're going to switch the screen back to you. So Cedric, switch the screen back to yourself now. And okay, so go back and mark that one. What you'd do is double click that and instead of working, put requires overnight in Singapore and connect to CX. In Singapore and connect to CX. Okay, and then you would Skype that to the salesperson so that they know to call the customer and ask them, hey, do you want to stay overnight in Singapore, and then connect to CX? So click completed because you're done with it for now. And the salesperson might come back and say, he'll do that. So go ahead and do that quote. So we actually did find something available, but it required that he goes to Singapore and either spend all day or a couple days and then fly out at midnight on Qatar Airways. You know, it requires, you know, it's unusual. So you would copy that right there and put that in Skype to the salesperson. I'm the salesperson handling your quotes. So you would go ahead and Skype that to me now, and that'll tip me off to call the customer and see if you can do a quote like that. So yeah, click on Donald the Guru and put that there. But then before you hit send, go back and get the customer's name. Yeah. Is that Vicky or is that the one? Oh, it is. Okay, you're right. Okay, and on that Vicky Badham one there, in front of her name, put SQ4. Yeah, SQ4, and change the new to researching, and then go down and save it at the lower left. So this one is kind of half started, but before you put the time into making a quote, let's make sure that the customer would actually consider that. And they might, you know, and so I'll call her and ask her, hey, are you willing to stay in Singapore a couple of days, or, you know, what's your thinking? And if she says yes, then I would come back in your Skype and I'd say, go ahead and do that quote. Okay, so now go to quotes needed at the top. Go ahead and send that Skype to me so that'll tip me off to give her a call. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so go back to quotes needed and just go to the next one. The next one is Brazil to Newark. That's nothing to do with Singapore Air, and your experience will tell you that, so skip that one. Dublin to LA, that's nothing to do with Singapore Air because it's the wrong part of the world. It's going from England to Los Angeles. You're not going to go all the way to Singapore to get from England to Los Angeles. So here's one, Melbourne to Minneapolis. Now that one is going from Australia to USA, so they could go Australia to Singapore to USA. We're probably not going to get a flight to Minneapolis on Singapore Air, but we might get one to Los Angeles or San Francisco and then hook something to that. So this one has a 0 on the left, so you don't have to check and see what's been done, so just click New. So just looking at it, it says, oh, I might be able to do this one. So then you start doing it. So copy Ben Stringer's name, put it in there, and put SQ4 in front of his name, and then put in new instead of new, and then go down to request workflow and mark that you're doing the, yeah, that's right, you save it. Mark in the SQ biz working and your name and submit. And by the way, while you're new, you can also Skype me and say, hey, I'm working on this one if you have any tips for me. So, you know, you could copy his name and put it in Skype to Donald, to myself, and just say, hey, I'm working on this one. I'm new. Have you got any tips for me? And then I would come and share a screen with you and help you with it. But I'll help you with it right now. So first, let's go to Matrix and see how they would go. Well, actually, let's go to the flight request details and write them down first, so we know what we got here. So we've got the 13th of June, and then we have the 19th of June. Okay, and it's for one person, and it's from Melbourne to Minneapolis. Okay, now the problem with this is it's a really short trip. So you can tell it's a business trip. So he's not going to be very flexible about going all the way to Singapore just to get to Los Angeles. So this one isn't so hot, really, now that we notice that it's such a short trip. If it was a vacation trip, they'd be going for a month. But he's only going for, 13th to the 19th. He's only going for, 6 days. So it's not a vacation. He's going on a business trip. So he's going to want the quickest trip he can get. So he may not be a very good candidate for this, but we're going to do it anyway because maybe it's the only choice we can come up with. I'm just giving you some background information that usually they don't want to go through Singapore just to get to Los Angeles if they're on a business trip. They're going to want to just have a nonstop, boom, Melbourne to LA, and then from LA to Minneapolis, and that's it. But we're going to do it anyway for training. And we're going to do it anyway because maybe that's the best we have to offer, So let's go to Matrix at the top and put in the cities. It's Melbourne to MSP. for one person, MEL to MSP. And the dates are the 13th of June and back the 19th of June. And yeah, that's good. Okay, so now we're going to look for anything that has Singapore Air in it. Okay, let's see. There's no Singapore Air there at all. So what we're going to do is go back and put just Singapore to Los Angeles or Singapore to San Francisco, because that's the two cities they fly to. Pretty soon you're going to know that because you're the Singapore specialist. So realize that there's only 3 cities that Singapore Air flies to. It's in the U.S. It's San Francisco and L.A. and New York. So what we would do is, I mean, you already know that because of your knowledge about Singapore Air, so you don't actually have to put it in Matrix to find that out. In other words, I'm experienced at Singapore Air, and I already know that they only fly to San Francisco, LA, and New York. So I don't have to put it in Matrix to become aware of that. I already know it. If there's something you already know, you can skip that step, obviously. So since I already know that, what I'm going to do is switch to my screen again and show you KVS again, because there's no sense going to all the trouble to go into the Singapore Air website until you try it in KVS first to see if you're wasting your time, because KVS is a lot faster. So I'm going to do Melbourne to LAX for this guy's dates, 13th of June. And I'm showing you exactly what you would do. As soon as you saw that Singapore Air didn't go all the way, then okay, that means I got to piece it together. Okay, that means I'm probably going to want to piece it together using KVS because it's faster. So I'm going to try Melbourne to LA the 13th of June. I'm going to try Melbourne to San Francisco the 13th of June, because I'm the Singapore specialist and I just know that that's where they go. So and it was for one person. So Melbourne to San Francisco. I'm just looking to see now if I can piece it together, because Matrix told me that Singapore Air doesn't go all the way from Melbourne to Minneapolis. So I can't get that on the Singapore Air website. They don't go all the way. So I've got to go to KVS and piece it together and see what pieces I can get. And I'm looking for CS Plus, and there's nothing there to LA on the 13th of June. And he's not flexible because it's a business trip. But just in case, I'll see what happens if he goes a day earlier. And then Melbourne to San Francisco the 13th of June, I'm looking for CS Plus or FS Plus, and there's none again. So I'll try that one a day later in case he can go on his business trip a day later. He probably cannot go a day earlier. See if he can go a day earlier. He probably cannot go a day later because it's business. He'll miss his meeting, right? So he's probably going to have to just go a day earlier, if anything. And that's what I'm doing now, checking a day earlier. Melbourne to San Francisco, Melbourne to LA, 12th of June when he really wanted the 13th. And I'm looking for CS Plus or FS Plus, nothing. So now I'm going to try Melbourne to JFK, which is one of the New York airports, because that's where they go. And I'm going to go on the date that he wants. And then I'm going to try the other New York airport, Newark, in case they go there on the date that he wants. So Melbourne to EWR, which is one of the New York airports, and Melbourne to JFK, which is one of the New York airports. And this is stuff that you'll just automatically know pretty soon, because as soon as you do this quite a bit, you're going to say, oh, I know that, that's where they go, and that's where they go. So nothing. Okay, so we found nothing for this on Singapore Air. Okay, now just a little bit of advanced training here. If you're the Singapore Air specialist, and you struck out like we just did. We tried we tried Matrix. They don't even go there, period. So there's no reason to go to the Singapore website. We already know they don't go there, period, to Minneapolis. So then we went to KVS and we saw, okay, if we can get it for Singapore Air for part of it, let's at least do that. And we couldn't get Singapore Air for part of it, okay? Well, I've already invested this much time in this particular guy. And so after a while, after you do Singapore Air all by itself for quite a while, we will let you start doing other airlines also. And this is an example of what you would do once you're allowed to do other airlines also. You would also check this in KVS while you're here. I mean, you're already here. You already got the cities in. All it is a click to see if you can use a different airline to Minneapolis on the 13th of June. And then this one will be Melbourne to Minneapolis on the 13th of June. And I'll click another different airline here. And while I'm here already anyway, there's nothing wrong with clicking and just looking in the back door to see if, well, is there some other airline that'll get me there quick and easy? And this is something you do in KVS. You wouldn't go to all these other airline websites because it takes too much time. But while you've already got the cities in there and you're already, you already found that you struck out on Singapore Air, which is your specialty, it's okay if you take, 30 seconds and say, well, is there somebody else, that does it? Let's see, this one's supposed to be one person. This is supposed to be one person. So while I'm here anyway, I'm just going to quickly look and see if anybody else has it. If somebody else has it, then you would speak up to me and say, hey, I know I'm the Singapore Air specialist, but look, Delta has it, and they don't have it. So nobody else has it either because there's no CS Plus or FS Plus. See, this one has 3 flights. It goes from Melbourne to Sydney, Sydney to LA, LA to Minneapolis, and all 3 of them would have to be CS Plus or a combination of CS Plus and FS Plus or all FS Plus. If it's CS Plus or CS1, 1 is a number, that means there's 1 seat available. Plus just means there's some seats available. So if it's a plus, that means some. If there's a number, it means there's 1, 2. This is 4 seats over here. So what I'm telling you is if you're already here anyway and you want to learn a little more and flip around and see if one of these other airlines has CS Plus or FS Plus, since you're here anyway, if you find it, then you could speak up to me and say, hey, I found it. It's not my specialty, but show me how to do this, and I'll send them a quote anyway. So if you find something that's not your specialty, I will show you how to do it, and you will be able to send a quote, and you will get paid for that. So my point is, while you're here, it doesn't hurt anything to check all of these or several of these or the ones that you're familiar with. I happen to know that Delta is the one that this quote is going to be. We're going to end up using Delta for this quote. So whoever's a Delta specialist, speak up and I'll show you how to do this one on Delta, because this one is going to end up being done on Delta because they go all the way to Minneapolis. See, here's flights all the way to Minneapolis. And the problem is, my experience with Delta already tells me that even though the Delta person needs to look at this and needs to try and do it, it actually may not end up being competitive, and we may not end up even doing it on Delta. Okay, so since we're training Singapore Air, I'm going to stop right here and say Singapore Air, it's not available, but it might be available on Delta. So that's the answer that we found out. So go back to your screen, click to share screen, show me your screen again. And what it means is that we bombed out on this one and it's not available. Okay, so go to your workflow checklist and put on there let's see, put not available on Singapore, but the Delta person should try Delta. That's what we found out because we cheated and we played with KVS and we saw that Delta goes there. Not available SQ, but you can try with Delta. Okay, hit completed and submit. So that gives the Delta person a tip. Hey, you ought to try it. And there again, you would Skype to Donald, the salesperson in charge of this, I found out it's not available in Delta, but I cheated a little and played with KVS, and it looks to me like maybe somebody can, maybe somebody can get it through Delta. So you're done with that one. Okay, so now go on to the next one. And to do that, you go to the top of the screen, go to quotes, quotes needed. And now we're looking down the list for anything that's logical to go through Singapore. The Milan to Colombia, that's not logical. You're not going to go to Singapore. This is from Johannesburg to Turkey. That one is not logical because Singapore doesn't fly to Turkey. So here's one that's logical: Johannesburg to Singapore. Maybe Singapore flies that. So there's a 0. So you don't need to click the plus to look and see what's been done. So you're just going to hit new. Okay. And now copy his name and put it in the name area and put SQ4, change it to researching, go into workflow and put in there that, you know, you're working on it. Or just put working and submit. Okay, so go to the Singapore website, and while you're doing that, well, let's see, let's go to request workflow and write down our information. So we have the 6th of April, right? And it's plus or minus 2 days. And then we have the 27th of April. So chances are this is a vacation trip because it's a long trip. And it looks like their outbound is flexible, but the return is fixed. They don't have anything flexible on the return. It's for 2 people. It's business class. It's from Johannesburg to Singapore. And MLT means multi-city, so that must mean they want to come back from somewhere else. So let's see, Johannesburg to Singapore. It doesn't say anything about multi-city in it. You picked multi-city, but we're just going to do a round trip. And this is a situation where you would Skype the salesperson and say, hey, how come this says multi-city when it looks like a simple round trip? But don't let that slow you down. Don't wait for an answer. Just send the quote anyway, the way it's written. And but you would Skype the salesperson and say, something funny here. He put multi-city, but it's a simple round trip. I'm going to send him a simple round trip because that's what he asked for, but he's mentioning multi-city. I don't know why. So the salesperson would call him and say, why are you mentioning multi-city? Do you really want to come back from somewhere else or what? So you communicate with the salesperson when you see something funny like that. Okay, so let's go to the Singapore Air website, and while you're doing that, I'm going to cheat and use KVS to try and help you go faster because that's the purpose of KVS. So I'm going to put in KVS Johannesburg to Singapore while you're putting it in the website for the 6th of April. Johannesburg to Singapore, the 6th of April. And it's for 2 people. And I'm going to try it on Singapore Air and KVS. And then I'm going to put the return is Singapore to Johannesburg, JMB, on the 27th of April. Singapore to Johannesburg, 27th of April. So remember, you're trying it as 2 one-ways on the website. So you, let's see, yeah, redeem flights, JNB to SIN. Put one way in there. Just search it one way at first. Okay. KVS gave me a little hint that it's available a day earlier, so put the 5th of April in there instead of the 6th, because he did say it's flexible, so put the 5th of April, and it's for 2 people, and search. So we used KVS for its purpose, and that is to find out, shortcuts. And the shortcut in KVS told me that it's actually available the 5th of April. So put the 5th of April in the website. and the password was 102579. So write that down so you'll have it, 102579. And put the 5th of April, just do one way. Why does it keep doing Manila? What's going on here? Try that again. Should be from JNB, right? I wonder if the website's broken. What's going on here? One way, 5th of April, business class. Search. I better try my work this time. Okay, see how it's available, and KVS told me that. That's one of the purposes of KVS. So click that, and then click, well, let me show you what to do. First, you just click that 45,000, and make sure it's the right information. It's the 5th of April, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now as soon as you click it, you don't have any miles in this account, so you're not going to be able to go any further. But see at the top there, it says it's 76,500. Let me explain what's going on here. They give us a discount if we book it online. See, if it was 45,000 per person, it should add up to 90,000, right? So why at the top is it giving it to me for 76.5 instead of 90? The answer is because when we book it online, they give us a discount. They charge us less miles. If you call them and book it, it's 45,000 per person. Here, let me get my pointer. If you call them on the phone, it's going to be 90,000 miles total for 2 people for the Saver business class. We're in business class. It's Saver, which is what we want. And that means that in KVS, it showed me CS Plus. And that's why I knew to tell you to go to the 5th of April. So what I'm telling you is this is what goes in your award calculator, even though it's not 90,000. We get it for less because we're going to end up booking it online. So go over to your award calculator and put in, put that 76, whatever it is, in there, 76,500. Okay, and you can't copy it with that comma, I don't think. Try it. Let's see. Yeah, anyway, you have 765,000 there. It has to be 76,500. So you got it right. And then the taxes, go back to the Singapore website and copy those ZARs, and then go to your Red Cross, go to a new tab, completely new tab, and put in the type ZAR there. And then when you paste that in, you got to get rid of the comma or it won't work. You can't have dollar signs or commas. So that translates to $412. So click that 412, including the 4 decimals, and go to your award calculator and put that in there. Okay. Now, on the Singapore Air website, remember it says that covers 2 people. Go back and let's look at that. See how it says it covers 2 adults? So in your award calculator, you're going to click the split button and change that 1 to a 2 because it covers 2 people, and hit OK. Because it covers 2 people, it's really only half that it costs us in miles per person. And all of our pricing is per person. So that's why, can you guys see my hand that I'm moving on the screen, or is it hidden? It's like a mouse, but it's the shape of a hand.
I can't see it.
You can or cannot? Cannot?
Cannot.
Okay, so let me get something that you can see. Okay, so now this is per person. The taxes is per person. Slide down your page. It's per person because you hit the split button, but you only hit the split button if the website says it covers 2 people. And then change this 1,200 to 400. Usually we go with 400 there. And then look and see at the selling price here, it's $1,263. Well, this is still only one way, though. The guy wants to come back. So we got to go back to the Singapore website now. And before you leave this website, write down the flight number that you found. It's SQ479. You see that? And if there was connections, you would also write down you know, the layover times and the other flight number. But it's only one flight number, and it's on the 5 of April. So write that down somewhere, because we're going to need that to make the quote. So now click on Edit Search in the Singapore, and I'm going to cheat and look at KVS again. Now it's going from Singapore to Johannesburg around the 27th of April, and that one he didn't say it was flexible, and KVS is saying it's not available that day. So let's see what we're going to do about the return. We're either going to have to bring him home a day earlier or a day later, even though he didn't say he was flexible. And you can also have the salesperson call him and ask him, did he really want, you know, a multi-city? Is he coming back from somewhere else? Let's see, what's this person's name and what time is it in South Africa? Let me see what time it is. Clock, South Africa. KMB. I'm looking at my world clock. Oh, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. So I could call him while you're trying to find a day that's available. You're going to put in the cities and then keep clicking next day, previous day, next day, and look for something in Saver Miles. Even if you don't find it in Saver Miles, but you do find it in Standard Miles, we're going to go ahead and send a quote like that, just because that's the best thing we could find. But let me try calling this guy while you're doing that to see what's going on. Why did it say multi-city? I forgot his last name, though. See if I can find it. If you know his last name, you could tell me, but otherwise I'll go find it. Oh, Tavendale, okay. Give me a second here. Now you as a quoter don't have to call the customer. Once you get advanced, if you do want to call customers, you can, and we'll pay you extra for that. You get paid 10 cents a minute of talk time if you call customers or airlines for us. And you get paid that on top of the $1 a quote if you decide that you want to help with that. Johannesburg, Singapore. Hope I don't wake him up. Let's see if he's awake. It's 8 o'clock in the morning where he is. Give me a second. I'm going to talk to him. Okay, let's see. He didn't answer. So we're going to be forced to just make our own decisions and send the quote anyway. Okay, so what we found out here on the return on the 20, you've got it on the 29 in Standard Miles. What about on the 27? What do you find on 27? So hit previous day again at the bottom and go to the 28 and then the 27. So the 29 has Standard Miles available but not Saver. That just means it's going to be a higher price. And nothing on the 28th because it's waitlisted, so hit previous day. Okay, and so the day he wants is available in Standard Miles, so we're going to have to use that. So click that 90,000 and then it'll pop up at the top. For 2 people, it's 153. So on the second line in your award calc, let me show you something on how to enter that 153. So type SQ on the second line. Just type SQ tab. And how many was it? One. Just cover that 0 up so that it erases it, so it's highlighted in the right there. And then just type what was it, 155? I forgot. And then hit tab. You don't put the zeros. You just type the number and hit tab. How many miles was it? I forgot up there on Singapore Air. 153. So you're going to hit 153 tab without the zeros, and it adds the zeros for you. And then for the taxes, go back to Singapore Air and get the taxes, and then put them in your currency, SGD 55040. So when you paste that in there, you can't have the SGD or any commas or anything. So get rid of all of that, and that turns into 384. So copy that and put that over there. Okay. So now we have a round trip. You have to click out of the click over here in the white area anywhere, which you've done. I'm just saying to people that you have to do that for it to click, for it to, what is the word, calculate. So when you type something, you don't just leave your cursor there. You click out here in the white area somewhere just to let it know that you're out of that field. So now go down to the yellow box, which we call the GP. And normally you just put 400 there on everything. But sometimes there's a reason to change it, and I'll show you what that would be. See how it's 4206 is the selling price? Well, that's a little silly. Why don't we make the GP 390, and then it'll be less than 4200? So make the GP 390 by just changing it there.
But Donald, I think that the miles here is for 2-person.
Oh, you're right.
153.
Okay. You're right.
I think we need to split it.
You're right. So hit split.
The second one.
Yeah. And hit 2, and then okay. Okay, so now let's go down and look at the bottom. So now it's 2735. So now we can add extra, because we like to try and make it like 2795. So add another 60, make it 460. Usually you try and make it, you see how it's 2797 now. So now the GP is 460. Write that down, because you're going to need to know that the GP is 460, okay? And now that you've got this right, you click this button at the bottom that says Export XML. It's the button in the middle. And then it puts all this complicated stuff, and you click anywhere in the white area first, and then hit Control A like Apple to highlight it all, and then Control C to copy it. Then go back to your original quote and click on Financial Info, and click this blue button right here that says Import the Award Calculator, and then hit up there and hit Control V like Victor to place it in there, and then hit OK. Now what that did was it put this price in, it put in your 460 GP, it put in a math line down here that, see how it's got your Singapore miles right here for going, it's got your Singapore miles for coming back, it's got your tax for going, you've got your tax for coming back, it's got your GP down here. We call this the math line, okay? And it's just all the components that make up the price. And what's missing here is the retail price, and also we need to adjust this currency. And to adjust the currency, first you change it to something totally unrelated, like Japanese yen or anything. You change it to what you do not want first. This guy is starting his trip in South Africa. So we're going to see if one of the choices is South African currency, which is the ZARs. Look under S for South African, go down further and see if there's one. Yeah, there we go, South African Rand. So you would click that, but you don't click South African Rand first. First you click what you do not want, and then click Rands, okay? You have to click something else first and then what you want. So now what it did is it put the Rands right here, and it's just telling the guy, okay, we're going to sell it to you for $27.97, which in your local currency is about this much. It's going to tell him both prices in the quote. Now, the only thing we're missing at this point is the retail price. So to get that, you go to Matrix. Oh, wait, first let's go to the Singapore website and write down that second flight number, one that we found, which is SQ478. SQ478, and it's on the 27th of April, right? Okay, so we know both flight numbers, we know the GP, so go to Matrix and put in all that information in Matrix. So it's going to be round trip now, we found it as 2 one-ways, but now we're going to, make it look pretty as a round trip. So put JNB there and SIN in the other one, and then hit the button that says Advanced Routing Codes. And in the top one, you're going to put SQ479. And then the bottom one, you're going to put SQ478. And you put in your correct dates. Remember, we got the 5th of April. We didn't get the 6th. We got the 5th of April because we had no choice. And then coming back, we went with a higher price to get the date he wanted, which is the 27th of April. And you uncheck this, and you make sure that says dollars, so you're good. So hit search. And then you go over to the right here, and the word details will show up. And you click the details, and you check it all, make sure it's right. It's 479, it's the right date. April 5th, it's 478, April 27th. If there was a layover, you check the length of the layover, make sure the layover is the right time, but there's no layovers because it's nonstop. The only problem we have is this guy can buy this flight for $28.84. That's not good news. So double click that. Flights from South Africa are really cheap. It's hard for us to compete. So what you do next is get as close to this black line as you can, but not on the black line. Click there, nothing will happen. Then hold the shift and then click down here after the word business, and it'll highlight it all for you. And then hit Control-C to copy it and go back to your quote. And paste it in there. Okay, now our problem is, and then go down and save it. Don't stretch it or anything, just go down and save it. Okay, and after you save it, you get rid of these symbols because they tend to send them to spam. And you type the word class after business just because it sounds better. And then you go to Seat Guru and find out if it's a flat bed. So go to a new tab at the top of your screen and go to seatguru.com and put in, it's the same airplane both ways, so you only have to do it once. Click on Find Seat Maps here and put in the SQ 479 on the 5th of April. And we're finding out if it's a flatbed. And then you got to get the right part of it. So this part goes from Cape Town to Johannesburg. That's not us. This part goes from Johannesburg to Singapore. That's us. So hit View Map. And then over here in the business class is how it says flatbed seats with 180 degrees. So you go back to your quote and put flatbed in there. Hit enter so that it goes on the next line, flatbed, the capital F and a capital B, yeah, and then the same thing. Okay, and then hit save. And so let's analyze this for a minute. Let's go back to our financial info. What was the price that Matrix gave us that he could buy it for if he never called us? Get that 2883.20 and let's go put it in where it belongs. 2883.20. Now let's think about this a minute. We're only going to save him less than $100, so that's not going to work. He's not going to see. The thing is, if he buys a ticket from us, he does not earn reward miles. But if he pays the 2883, he does earn reward miles. So he's not going to buy this because we're not saving him enough money. So we're going to have to go adjust this GP and make our price lower. Otherwise, he's not going to buy it. So let's go all the way down to $100 to make it so to do that, we've got to go to the award calculator to adjust it. So change that 460 to $100 because we have no choice. We can't make any money on this, but we want the customer for next time. So even if we have to sell it to him for no profit almost, we will. So $100 is almost no profit, but that's our limit. So let's give it to him for $24.21. So now hit this export XML again. And Control A, Control C, and put that in there. Just hit the button again here, import, and put that in there, hit OK. Okay, so now we've got to adjust this price again because that's not the right conversion. So change it to something you do not want, and now change it back to what you do want, and see how it adjusted this. Instead of whatever it was, now it's that. Okay, so now he's buying it from us for 24 and he would pay 28, so we're saving him $400 now, right? So now it makes sense. He'll probably be willing to buy it. So go down and hit save. And now we've got to put the itinerary in there, or did we already? Oh, we did already. Okay, so go down to quote send. We're ready to send it because we did step 1, 2, 3, 4. Now notice this complicated screen that has a bunch of weird stuff on it. You do nothing, don't touch it, but instead hit this preview and send button. And on this, okay, oh, GP must be above $100. Okay, make it $101 then. So go to financial, or yeah, go here and make it 105 or something or other. Okay, and then hit the export, highlight it, Control C, go back and import it, and then you've got to change the rands again to something you do not want. Now change it to what you do want, and that adjusts this to what it should be. And now we're okay. Try it now. See if it'll let you send it now. Okay, do nothing on the complicated screen, but instead hit that button at the lower left. Okay, good. Now there's 3 things you have to do to this before you send it. One is you've got to add a paragraph, which, do you have that paragraph yet, or do I need to Skype it to you? Yeah, that's the paragraph. Add that paragraph right after the word savings, and then you go down and get the US dollar price and copy it. Put that in the subject line instead of what's there. Make the dollars spelled out, and put business class. And because you're a Singapore Air specialist, you know that Singapore Air has a rating as a 5-star airline. So you could put 5-star quality in the subject line, or you could put it here where my arrow is, 5-star quality, because it is. But you only put that because you know it is. You know, if you're the Singapore Air specialist, you know this is a 5-star airline. So you can put that somewhere. So that's the second thing you do is this subject line. The third thing you do is put your code. So go to the very bottom of the quote and click right here in the white area first. That makes this black line start flashing. Now you can hit the enter key and it'll let you go down below there. Put the first part of your email login, which is Cedric's, whatever it is, Cedric B. Okay, then put a hyphen. And we searched for 2 seats, remember? So put a 2 there, and then put a hyphen. And our GP is 105, so put 105 there. But for the zeros, you always use a G. So it's going to be 1G5. Okay, so let me kind of explain this to everybody. So your code is the first part of your company email, which is probably your first name and your last initial in most cases. So your code is Cedric B. The 2 means that you searched for 2 seats. There's 2 seats available, but even though you search for 2 seats, our quote is always for 1 person. So the quote is for 1 person, but you are letting the salesperson know if they want to buy 2 seats, I searched for 2 seats because he said he wanted 2 seats. There's 2 seats available this price. This is the GP, which is the profit the company's making on the ticket, and the zeros in the GP are always G's. So you're done. So hit send. And that one is completely done and it's sent. But wait a minute, it says this has been sent successfully, so go ahead and hit close. Now stop and think for a minute. It looks like you haven't sent it yet and maybe you're sitting there, you know, having dinner and you forgot, oh, did I send this one or did I not send this one? If you're not sure if you sent it, don't send it again, but instead close this window and go to your quote and hit your refresh key and see if this researching automatically changes to sent by itself when you refresh the page. It did, so that means it was sent. You don't have to send it again. Okay, so if you're not sure if you sent it, don't send it again, but instead go refresh your page and see if it says sent. So this one's completely done. So you go up here to quotes, and it's also a good idea if you're completely done with one. There's a couple of good things to do. First of all, go into your request for workflow checklist on it. I should have told you this before I had you leave. Did you leave, or are you still here on this page? I'm not sure. Go in there and double click that and change it to sent, and and then hit submit. And then it's also nice if you just copy his name right now, this SQ for so-and-so, copy that and Skype it to Donald and just say completed or something like that. So that tips off me, I'm Donald. It tips off me to call the guy and say, hey, this is what I found for you. How does it look? Okay. So you kind of communicate with your salesperson who's, working the account, and let them know what's happening. As background information, you can eventually, if you want to, it's optional, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can eventually be the person that calls the customer that says, hey, I sent you a quote. I want to make sure you saw it. I want to make sure it's not stuck in your spam. How does the quote look? Do we need to change the date? Is it going to work for you? If you make that phone call, we will pay you extra 10 cents a minute for any connected talk time talking to a customer. And then if you progress beyond that, sooner or later, if you want to, you can even call him back again and say, now that you thought about it, let's do it. And if he does it and you write up the order, then you get 5% of the GP also on top of that. So in this job, you can make $1 a quote, or you can also make phone calls to make an additional 10 cents a minute talk time on the phone, or you can also help us make sales and make an additional 5% of the GP. Okay, so anyway, that's for future. But for now, you're just sending quotes as fast as you can go for $1 a quote. And once you get experience, you'll be able to blast through these Singapore Air quotes, boom, 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 because when you look at the quotes needed, go back up here to quotes needed, after a while, you're just going to automatically know which ones you should work on and which ones you should skip. Like the one that we looked at here, this is one that if he's flying to Singapore, obviously there's a pretty good chance that we're going to use Singapore Airlines, right? Now this one is Hong Kong, is a whole bunch of different cities. That one, it's not very likely that we're going to use Singapore Air because he's going from Hong Kong to India to Thailand to Singapore to Amsterdam. Well, actually, that is one that we might use because come to think of it, Singapore Air flies to all those cities. So this actually is one that you would work on, come to think of it, because Singapore Air does fly to Hong Kong, Mumbai, Thailand, and Singapore, and Amsterdam. They go to all those places. So therefore, that would probably be the next one that you work on. The only problem is I'm out of time, so I'm going to have to show you that one another time. And it's actually too complicated for you to work on for your first one around, because the way you would do that one is a bunch of one-ways in Singapore Air, and you'd use about 4 lines in the award calculator and just do a bunch of one-ways and just add them up. But this is another one that's logical for Singapore Air, because see, Singapore Air does fly to JFK and they do fly to Auckland. So this is another one that's obvious to you that you should work on. And let me look down the list here. From London to Washington, definitely you'd skip that one because you're not going to go to Singapore to get from London to Washington. So you'd skip that one. This Brussels to Sydney is one that you would work on, but Singapore Air doesn't fly exactly to Brussels. So you'd have to have them fly from, let's say, Paris or Amsterdam to Sydney. Then you'd have to add on a cash flight that you get from Matrix to get them from Brussels to either Amsterdam or to Paris, so that you can do Singapore Air from from Paris to Sydney, or otherwise from Amsterdam to Sydney. Then on the front of it, you'd have a little flight that you added in that you got from Matrix that gets them from Brussels to either Amsterdam or Brussels to Paris. And we'll train you on that. But my point is, after a while, you just know. And this one here, Venice to Melbourne, that's not a very good one for Singapore Air because they don't fly to Venice, but you could still do it anyway if you just get a cash flight from Matrix, Venice to somewhere that Singapore Air does fly. If you're going to be the Singapore Air specialist, Skype with me and I'll give you a complete list of cities that they fly to in Europe, And you can just make a list of them and have it there on your desk and know if it's going to one of these cities, I know that I can send a Singapore quote because they fly there. This one you would still send, but you'd have to get a cash flight from Matrix to take them from Venice to somewhere that Singapore Air does fly. And where they do fly near there is Milan and Rome and Zurich and Amsterdam. So any one of those. So you would work on that one too. This Brisbane to London one, you would work on as the Singapore Air specialist because it's logical to go from Brisbane to Sydney to London. It's right on the way. So that's another one you would work on. And that, I'm just giving you an example. This one that goes from Stockholm to Brisbane, that's one where you'd have to get a cash flight from Matrix to get them from Stockholm to Amsterdam, which is where Singapore Air does fly. Then you'd use Singapore Air from Amsterdam to Singapore to Brisbane. And so that's one you would work on. This one that goes from Bucharest to Cincinnati, you would ignore it and just skip it because there's no reason to go from, go through Sydney to get there. And Delhi to New York, that one you would try on Singapore Air because it's not so bad to go from Delhi to Singapore and from there to New York. It's probably not going to be competitive because flights in India are so cheap, but it is one that you could try to do. This Brisbane to Ottawa is one that you could try because you could go from Brisbane to Singapore. They don't fly to Ottawa, but they do fly to San Francisco or LA or New York, and you could get a cash flight from Matrix. Once you get them to San Francisco or LA or New York, you could get a cash flight to Matrix and add it into the quote and make it so you get them all the way to Ottawa. Now, before I quit tonight, I want to show you just really quickly, what do you do if there is a cash flight that you added in from Matrix? So go to your award calculator for a minute. Let me just explain that. You would click right here where it says click to expand. And let's say that this customer, instead of going to, where did we take him? I forgot. We took him to Singapore. Let's say he actually wanted to go to Bangkok. So what we could do is we could put Singapore to Bangkok right here and get a cash flight from Matrix. Let's say it was $300, put $300 there. And then you would go copy that flight from Matrix and put it into the itinerary, and add it on so that once he gets to Singapore, there's another flight that gets him in, and then that raises the price $300 automatically. So go down here, instead of selling it for 20, whatever it was, go to the bottom of your screen. Instead of selling it for 24, now it's 27 because it includes this $300 flight that we got from Matrix. So excuse me, that I did that backwards. So remember we were selling this for 24. Now we added in a flight that gets them from Singapore to Bangkok for cash, and we put that cash flight in there, and it raised the price. Anyway, that's how you do cash flights. Sometimes you have to add on a cash flight in the beginning or the end of the trip because, as in that example where he was going from Brisbane to Ottawa, well, Singapore Air doesn't fly there, but they do fly to New York. So you do Brisbane to Singapore to New York, and then the New York to Ottawa, you'd go up there and you'd click on extra flights, expand, and you type it in there, put in the cash price. And the cash price is just whatever Matrix says for that flight. So go to Matrix, for example. Let's say we got him to New York. So go modify search, and you just put in here, change it from JFK to YOW and get rid of those Singapore flight numbers. And let's say it was just a one-way that we needed. And then it doesn't matter the date. Now this time, since we're going to buy it with money, we do have to have this checked because we do have to know that it really is for sale. When you're just getting pretty flights for rewards, you uncheck that because we don't really care if it's actually still for sale at that price because we're not going to buy it at that price. We're going to buy it with points. But if you're doing a connection flight to add in, you do have to have that checked because we do have to know that it really is for sale at that price. So click search. And whatever flight this gives you, you just pick one that's 3 hours after they got to New York so they have time to go get their baggage and recheck it in again for this flight. And then you just pick whichever one of these is the right time, and then you click on it, click the price, let's say. Then you copy this flight into Matrix and put it in the middle of the trip or wherever it belongs. you add this $194 into your award calculator, and that's how you add a cash flight. That's how you deal with all those cities where you found out that Singapore Air goes part of the way, but not all the way, and you need to add something in. That would be in this extra flight section. And then maybe on the way back, he's going to come back from Ho Chi Minh City to Singapore. So put SGN to Singapore here, you know, on the way back. He's got to get back to Singapore somehow. Remember, this is the guy from Africa. Let's say he really wanted to go to Bangkok. So then, and let's say he went on his own from Bangkok to Saigon, and now he wants to come back from Ho Chi Minh City. No, we're not going to take him from Bangkok to Saigon. He's going to do that on his own. And when he's all done with this trip, he's going to end up in SGN. But now he wants to get back to Singapore to pick up this flight. So put SGN to SIN, and maybe that's another $300. You put that in here, and then you'd put that flight in the middle of the reservation also. Because see, sometimes people want to say that I want to go to Bangkok, but I want to come back from Ho Chi Minh City. But we still have to get them to Singapore because our flight just goes to Singapore and back. You see what I mean? So this is where you add those flights that we cannot get with miles, but we need to buy a flight to complete his trip to make it work. That's where these flights go. And these are just cash prices that we're going to pay from Matrix to just buy the flight. And then it automatically adds it in down here. Now his trip is $3,000 because we have $600 of the flights added in. You see what I'm saying? Okay, anybody have a quick question before I leave? I'll be back here again, Philippine time at, let me think. Tomorrow, I won't be here till Tuesday your time. So I'll be back here Tuesday your time at 6 in the morning and also at noontime, 12:30 noontime on Tuesday. So if you have questions in the meantime, if you see me on Skype, if my Skype light is green, you can ask me questions anytime, even if it's not a training time. And you can Skype me things and say, hey, I worked on this quote. Here's how it went. I worked on this quote. I bombed out. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. Help me, please, etc. So whenever you see my Skype light green, for example, go to Skype right now, Cedric, in your screen, and click on Donald. Wait a second, and see how my light is green right here. That means I'm online and you can ask me questions. When that light is, you know, yellow or something else, it means I'm not around. But if that light is green, even if it's the middle of the night, anytime 24 hours, it usually means I'm here and you can ask me questions or ask for help, even if it's not a training meeting. Okay, so is there any other quick questions before we end this meeting?
Can I ask for the KVS tool, sir?
Yes, I just don't have time to give it to you right now. Mm-hmm. So watch for when my light is green next time, either tomorrow or the next day or whenever you do see it green. And ask me for it at that time and I can give it to you. In the meantime, you can still make quotes. Just do it with the Singapore Air website. Okay. Just keep, you know, and remember on the Singapore Air website, if you have to, you can do it in pieces there too. You can just do one way from, let's say, Melbourne to Singapore, and then go get a cash flight from Matrix for the rest of it, or one way. You know what I mean? You can piece it together in pieces using the website. It's just not as fast as KVS. We'll make it so you have KVS, but I just have to do that another day when I have time. But in the meantime, you can go ahead and start sending quotes, and just keep Skyping me questions, and when I come back to my computer, I'll answer the questions whenever I'm around, you know.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, officially I'll be back at 6 in the morning on Tuesday, Philippine time. I'll also be here every day starting Tuesday at 12:30 noontime. But like I said, you can also ask me questions any other time if my Skype light is green. Go ahead. And those of you that don't have a login yet, be sure and fill in that link that I gave you today. Okay, I'm going to go and just talk to me again whenever you want to when my Skype light is green.